I meant to ask you, how are your French lessons going?
They are going surprisingly well. I feel like I'm finally getting a hold of it, which kind of sucks because unfortunately I'm having my last lesson tomorrow. So after that, it will probably go to hell again.
So, not quite bilingual yet.
Yeah, sure, man. No, I'm not. Anyway, let's start recording this podcast that I'm doing in my second language, shall we?
This isn't a podcast with all the answers
It's a conversation about figuring things out as you go
from two very different generations.
with Michelle R. Williams.
And Nick Hurst.
Welcome to Life Happens. I really don't like your attitude today. And you asking me or telling me that I'm not quite bilingual. Also, it might be because I'm in a very weird mood today.
That's
And
for
I
sure.
feel like I'm very bitchy. I don't know what came over me, but today, literally bear with me because I'm in such a terribly weird mood. And I'm honestly so glad that we are recording an episode about languages and being bilingual. And I can really give my hot takes, which I feel like the more comfortable I'm getting with this podcast, the more hot takes I'm giving. So thank God there's no space for it today because I am in such a hater mode today. And yeah, and you saw it first-handed this morning.
Well, kind of. Will definitely warn everyone that Michelle has definitely taken her bitch pill this morning when she got up.
You think I need to get a pill for it? And that attitude of yours is exactly the reason I'm being bitchy today. I'm just really tired to pretend you are funny, Nick, today, really.
I'm just the one here to press your buttons, apparently.
My gosh, this is going to be a good one. Jeez. Also, I feel like my English is not very Englishing today. So isn't that such a perfect state to be in doing an episode about being bilingual? Which, by the way, I am, okay? Just because my French is not there yet. I just feel like sometimes you are forgetting I'm actually Czech. And then you are surprised when I give you Slavic attitude. You know, I'm not being bitchy. I'm just, well,
Is that
Slavic.
what it is? Slavic, I see.
Yeah.
Well, I'm English, and of course we're very polite.
Yeah. Also, yeah, but you are married to a Slavic woman. So
True.
you should know. You should know.
Yes, that's true. And I actually live in what you could call a bilingual household. But of course,
Not something you could call literally a bilingual household.
yeah, literally, yeah. My wife is Czech, and my kids are bilingual in English and Czech, and quite naturally so. They didn't have to learn either language. They just were brought up speaking each language.
Lucky them.
So they are able to express themselves fully in either English or Czech. And quite often, as with genuinely bilingual people, as you will know, they'll switch from one language to another mid-sentence, which is something I always find amazing. I first spotted this when I had, going back many, many years, and I had some friends, an Argentinian family, and they were all bilingual in Spanish and English. And the husband, who's very much an Argentinian intellectual, could speak something like 7 languages. So quite often when he and his wife were talking, they would switch from English to Spanish to French and then back again, all in the course of a sentence.
I love that. That's
It
great.
was just really, really used to blow my mind. But what I wanted to say about it was that having been kind of on the outside looking in and then teaching for 10 years in the Czech Republic as a native English speaker to help Czech students gain confidence with speaking and listening to English. One of my key objectives in that was to try to help students as they got more confident and more able to speak the language, was to be able to connect their personalities and express their personalities in a different language, because that's what's really hard. And I used to watch the kids when they were interacting with each other in their own language, and I could see their personalities coming out, because when I would be teaching them, and they would be sitting there, about 2/3 of them desperately trying to understand what I was saying. 1/3 had probably already given up and were looking at their phones or something.
Yeah, that was me.
Yes, because if you come into Life Happens later along our run, which was now into our 27th or 28th week, I can't remember.
28.
Michelle and I, thank you, know each other because I used to teach Michelle when she was at school.
You told me English, and now you are surprised when I'm giving you bitchy attitude in English. That's your fault, man. If you never told me English, you wouldn't get that.
So what
Purely your
what you're saying there is that I succeeded in my objective of allowing you or enabling you, better word, to connect your personality with your new language and express it.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I mean, you did. I'll give you that. I hope it makes you feel better.
Yeah, I'm going to sit back and just, hey.
You managed, I'm sure. So now, so what does that mean is that now you can't complain about me being rude to you because that's basically your own fault. Okay, I can roll with that. That's fine.
I think that's twisting my words to a new level.
No, I'm fine with that narrative. Let's just roll with it.
Maybe you should be a lawyer.
Wow.
in your second language.
I would be better in English, trust me.
Or a spin doctor. You don't hear much about spin doctors these days. Do you know what that is? Spin doctor?
I have no idea what that is.
Somebody working in the
It's
media.
just a doctor spinning you around and hoping to cure you with that.
No, but if that image works for you,
then I'm very disappointed.
It's a spin doctor is somebody who tells a story for the press to obscure the actual facts of a story. So they are spinning the story,
right?
Is what they're calling it. So, somebody, naming no names here, but imagine that somebody goes and declares war on Iran and then tries to persuade the rest of the world that this is a good idea. That would be spinning the story. I mean, that's just obviously I just made that particular example up, but there are other examples available.
That was an extreme example, but long story short, I am basically a spin doctor when I'm talking about you because you claim that everything I tell about you is nonsense. I call it my fan theories. So, yeah, okay. It's better. Yeah, actually, I call it just spreading gossip. But if you want to call it a spin doctor, that's working with me. I like that.
Spin doctor is probably slightly more concerned with facts than gossip or big stories and gossip. Getting back to your bilinguality, if that is a word, how hard was it for you?
You should know that.
I should?
You should know if that's a word.
But you're the bilingual one, so you should be able to tell me what it is in both languages.
Okay, oh my gosh, we will. I take back what I said at the beginning of this episode, that this topic is very much peaceful and I can give my hot takes. No, I will argue with you. I can already see that. Because mind you, for people who don't know, Nick only speaks English. He's claiming that he speaks Czech, but well, between you and me, that's not true. And even though I speak 2 languages, he still makes fun of my English.
Dobrý den, bonjour.
So typical of English native speakers. You know one word in 5 languages, and you are like, I speak 5 languages. Man, I can swear in 7 languages. That doesn't make me multilingual.
I used to be able to say I love you in a whole range of different languages.
I am not surprised. It's probably, that and knowing how to propose a marriage is probably what you needed. You walked into that.
That sounds so romantic, doesn't it? Mina Rakistan Sinua.
Before I make fun of it, what language is that?
Finnish. I love you.
Wait, that's
Finnish.
actually cool. Yeah, wait, that's actually cool. Because Scandinavian languages are so hard. And I really admire anyone who learns.
Strictly speaking, Finland isn't in Scandinavia.
Nick.
I just had to say that for our Finnish listeners because they would all be going, wait a minute.
Okay, I think that in the last episode, we established very clearly that geography is not something I can do. All right? I think we already know that. And
But at least we
okay.
all learned that the capital of Albania
No,
is
just
Tirana.
don't.
Getting back to languages, tell me about being bilingual. What can you say? I mean, obviously you could say most things in 2 languages. So does it shape your identity? Are you a different person? You know, now that
I
I've
am
connected.
such a different person. It's crazy. And, you know, I feel like it's something no one warns you about when you are learning another language. And everyone's like, you know, you have to learn the grammar and the vocabulary and this and that and blah, blah, blah. But no one warns you about what it does to your personality when you are just between speaking one language and speaking two. Because, like, at this point, I feel like I really established my personality in both languages. But there was a time period when it was just so confusing to me. And funnily enough, I am such a different person in Czech. I'm not sure if you know, like if you noticed, maybe when I was visiting you in Brussels and I was talking to your wife in Czech. I'm not sure if you noticed like any personality switch, but I do notice it a lot. And in Czech, I'm such a shy person. I don't talk to people. I don't feel confident in speaking. You know, like it's actually my biggest nightmare when people get like stage fright. I don't get stage fright in English. If you now put me in a room with like 1,000 people and told me, you know, do a not even do a presentation, just talk, you know, like you do in podcasts. I mean, I am doing a podcast in English. I could never do that in Czech because I am so shy and awkward in Czech and I don't like it and I don't talk to people. And it's so funny. I had that sort of transition when I came back from America, and my family is making fun of me because of that to this day. Because very shortly after I came back, he went to a restaurant and I just needed something from the waitress, like another drink or I don't know. And I was waiting for her for like 30 minutes. And my mom was like, just go to the bar and just ask her to make you a drink. And I was like, no, absolutely the fuck not. I'm not going there talking to a waitress. And my mom looked at me, she was like, you just came back from America. You were socializing every single day. You were going through airports and offices and everything, and you were fine. You are doing a damn podcast, and you are scared to go ask a waitress for another drink. And for the love of God, I couldn't explain to her that I have no problem doing any of that in English, but it's the language barrier that makes it a problem. Does it make sense to you, or am I just weird?
No, it does. It makes sense. But what's weird is that it's your second language that you are more confident in. You're a more confident personality. And I mean, I can remember you as a schoolgirl when I was teaching you, and you were, you know, a quiet, shy person in my classes.
I still am. You just don't know it because I'm being bitchy around you.
So in terms of your language progression, I mean, you weren't at this level when you left the school when I was teaching you. And I can remember the last real kind of time that we interacted at school, which was your sort of graduation ceremony. And then you came up to me afterwards because you had something to give me. But you brought with you one of the class's good English speakers, I think, just as backup, although you did manage to actually speak to me, albeit quite shyly. And then a few years later, 2 years later, maybe, yeah, it must have been 2 years later.
Like that.
And then we met up to start doing private conversation lessons. At what point, and by which time your language skills had just exploded, but at what point do you realize, speaking as somebody who isn't quite bilingual, as I think we've established, at what point do you realize that you are? You know, at what point did you realize, you know, you've got this and you've got this vocabulary and most of the grammar down?
I have no idea. Because to be completely honest, I am still not completely sure about saying I am bilingual. And there is something about it. Maybe it's just like me being a very insecure or like self-critical person in general, that I'm not the type of person who would be proud on things she's doing. So maybe that's just this part of me. I am still not really saying I'm bilingual. I mean, I'm obviously saying it in this podcast because like that's sort of the point and I'm making fun of it. But I prefer to say that like, oh yeah, I speak English, like I feel more secure or more confident in English. I speak better English than I speak Czech and so on and so on. But I don't really claim I'm bilingual because I still do make mistakes. On the other hand, is there ever time when you don't make mistakes? Because you make mistakes and you're a native. And of course, you would never admit that, so I forget I said it. But, sometimes I'm listening back to this podcast and I'm like, oh my gosh, that thing I just said, terrible grammar mistake. And maybe because of that, I'm still like, yeah, maybe I'm not fully bilingual. But, another thing that comes with this, and I need someone to relate to that. So, you all, if you are bilingual, please tell me I'm not the only one, because another stage of this whole process is sort of forgetting your own language. So there is a certain point when you basically don't speak any language perfectly. Because I don't feel like I am allowed anymore to say that I'm a native Czech speaker, because my Czech is terrible. I don't really use it in any area of my life apart from talking to my family, which also doesn't happen a lot, if I'm completely honest. And so I am making like grammar mistakes in my own language. So I'm like, basically, I don't speak any language at this point, and I'm just like rolling with two random languages, somehow like morphing them together, which so many people hate. And yeah, it's a struggle. And I would never say, if someone asks me like, what's your primary language? Not your native language, but what's your primary language? I always say English. Everything I ever do, I always choose English because I'm not comfortable in Czech anymore. So basically, maybe I'm not bilingual. Maybe I just speak English at this point.
I think you're bilingual. And let's face it, I mean, you're writing books
Are you
in
being
English.
nice to me? Was that a compliment? Wow, was not expecting that. By the way, you are the one who's making fun of my English, so I don't know what you're doing here.
I was caught being nice to you. Damn. I was hoping you wouldn't notice. Look, what I want to do is let our listeners decide. Unfortunately, this is not live, so we can't do like a quick thumbs up or thumbs down. But if you think that Michelle is bilingual, go and give us a like on this podcast. So we'll count up the likes and we'll see how many people actually think Michelle is bilingual. I'll go and give it a like myself because I do actually quite
Thank
like
you.
this podcast. Life happens. You're welcome.
I just wanted to point out that people never heard me speak Czech in this podcast.
No.
So what if I'm making it up? What if I'm not Czech at all and it's just a marketing move to make us seem more interesting? And this whole time I'm an English native speaker.
Okay, well then I think Miluvic Česky?
Oh my gosh, no, that's my one rule. I'm not speaking Czech in this podcast. I think we already established that. Okay, the first rule was that I won't swear. I think I fucked that up pretty early on.
You definitely fucked that up.
So my now one and only rule, I'm not speaking Czech in this podcast.
Okay, so clearly speaking Czech is worse than swearing. Okay.
Yes.
That's a fine example for your children at home, folks. How does it affect your relationships and friendships? Or does it mean you basically want to have more relationships and friendships with English speakers rather than Czech speakers?
Well, yes, because I'm not very social in Czech, so that goes with my personality. And I find it easier to speak to people in English. Just like the idea of being somewhere and meeting a bunch of strangers and them talking in English to me. I'm like, yeah, let's be friends, let's communicate. If a Czech person would do that, I would probably be like, nice, thank you, never mind, I'm not feeling comfortable enough to do that. So for me, it definitely affects it. But also, it kind of sucks because I think I mentioned that in the episode about friendships, sort of my experience from America when I was trying to make friends with other au pairs. who were, also foreigners, and English was their second language. And my English was better than theirs. And first of all, they were kind of scared of that, so they didn't want to talk to me. But also, they didn't really have their personalities developed in English. So I think it's very hard to make friends and talk to people when your personality is not showing. You know what I mean? And that's another thing about speaking two or more languages, from feeling like you have different personality in each, which is something not only I'm dealing with, but it's something that a lot of bilingual people said that that's what's happening to them. But also, again, as I'm saying, it's a process. And at certain point before you are comfortable enough in English, that's what you were saying with the kids at school, that they didn't really develop the personality. Obviously, it makes it harder to maintain or create relationships when you can't really show them who you are. And even though my personality is probably very clear in English, sometimes I still struggle with it. And sometimes I'm still like, wow, I would make such a great joke right now, but I can't make it in English. And it just won't be funny in English. And I'm like thinking, damn, people, you are really missing out. Now you can't know how funny I am because you don't speak my language.
So, I mean, I think that's one of the key areas to illustrate when people are able to, speak a language with a degree of fluency that is verging on bilinguality.
You really like that word.
No, I don't, because it's really hard to say. Well, it is for me. But the other thing...
I'm really curious if it even exists.
Yeah,
maybe you should have Googled it before the podcast, because what if now you find out that the word doesn't exist?
Excuse me, when we were talking before we went into record mode, you specifically told me, don't Google it.
No, hear me out. First of all, why are you listening to me? Like, who am I to tell you what to do?
Exactly why.
Second of all, I told you that because I needed you to do certain work, and because you have attention issues. If you started Googling something, you would never do that. You would never finish that task. So that was the reason.
Yeah, I know.
Also, you are not supposed to listen to me. Like, that's your problem.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
This is what I'm working with, people. This is what I'm working.
I was just distracted there. So
Of course.
We were talking about this whole being able to express your personality. And of course, when it comes to it, when in friendships and relationships, I guess being able to express your emotions, that's the key to any friendship or relationship.
Certainly.
If you can't do that in a second language, then is it going to work? A friendship or a relationship?
Well, I mean, you tell me. You dated a lot of people whose English wasn't their first language, so you tell me how that looked.
Yeah, that's true. And it actually, in terms of relationships, I don't think it ever was a problem, because the language of love and all of that sort of thing.
Isn't that French?
No, but just there are certain things and areas of life where you can express yourself without words. And I'm not just thinking about...
Okay, yeah, okay.
No. I don't want to... See, I knew your mind would instantly go to a dark place, but...
You started with that, man.
There's certain areas, and I don't just mean, relationships between men and women, but there are certain things that we can somehow get by without words. But I'm guessing that in the longer term, if a relationship is going to last, you're going to really need to achieve a degree of bilinguality just to, oh, look, I said it much easier that time. Just to be able to express not only your emotions, but also your emotional needs and to pick up on other people's emotions. And going back to what we were talking about before, I'm guessing that the need to be able to, first of all, express your own emotions and also your emotional needs to somebody that you're very close to, plus being able to pick up and understand what they're saying in terms of, really emotional and personal things. That's quite
Yeah.
important. And I think going back to what I was just saying before, a good barometer of where you are in terms of becoming bilingual is that ability that you were talking about to tell a joke in your second language or to understand a joke. And it's something I actually used to do in classes. Normally when people got to the final class at elementary school in Czech, so when you'd be about 15, and I would tell the odd joke. And then I could see the people that laughed. I knew, okay, you're getting to a level now, much better than a test and more fun, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, not to pop your bubble, but wasn't it just because they kind of needed a better mark? Because I am sure I laughed a few times just to get on your good side. And I had no idea what you just said.
Didn't
I
work.
still do that, by the way.
It didn't work. I didn't give people who laughed at my jokes better marks just because they
Damn it,
laughed
you're
at my
just
jokes.
telling me now. Okay, never mind. Why the fuck am I laughing at your jokes?
Because actually they're funny. Going back to bilinguality, do you think in English?
I do. At this point, I do everything in English. That's why I'm not in touch with Czech. I am trying to think about when that happened. And I have actually no idea because there probably had to be a certain point when I switched from thinking in Czech into thinking in English. And I think it was actually quite recently. I mean, not like a year ago, but maybe like 2-3 years ago, something like that. And I don't think I even noticed. And sometimes it's so funny because sometimes when I'm speaking in Czech, I have to translate my thoughts, which is so annoying. And it's like, yeah, and I'm sure that you can tell as someone who taught a language, when you ask someone a question and they know the answer technically, but it takes them a while because they need to translate the answer. Basically, that's what I do, but I'm translating into my own language. And as you are already saying, like with the jokes and everything, sometimes you can't translate everything literally. I feel like it's especially between English and, for example, Czech, because Czech is not only a very complicated language, but also very rich. And we have so many words and so many sentences that you couldn't possibly translate into English. And so that's not really a problem for me, but the problem for me is like the other side of it, that I know the answer in English, but it doesn't make sense in Czech. And I often use even like idioms maybe that I say them in Czech. Yeah, because I got that from you. That's just, yeah. Like every idiom I know is basically came from you, because why else would I know that? But the thing is that I can't tell the difference. I literally, if you tell me something, especially like an idiom, I can't tell you from what language it came. So very often I'm using English idioms in Czech. And for me, it's just natural because I'm like, yeah, I know that idiom. I know that if you put these two words together, it makes sense. And I say it. And all the Czech speakers around me are like, you made up an idiom. And I'm like, no, I didn't. That's like, very common one. And no one knows that. And that's the moment when I'm like, oh, it probably comes from English then. And it's just, I feel like, another thing that I kind of want to say, I need every bilingual or multilingual person to relate to this, because there are so many jokes on like people acting like they don't know their own language, and it's very mocking go-to joke. Like, I'm sorry, I don't remember it. I just came back from England, so I'm English now. I can't speak my own language. And I know that's how I sound, but bilingual people know it's a real struggle. Hear me out sometimes when I'm talking to someone and I'm like, oh, what's the word in Czech? And I'm like, I'm not trying to be dramatic or interesting. I'm just stupid. And it's like everyday struggle. Because as I'm saying, like my Czech is getting worse, I feel like, each day. Which is funny because I'm moving to Ireland in a few weeks. And I won't be Czech anymore after a few months there. And it's just a real struggle. And I feel like speaking more languages should make you feel smarter And in other people's eyes, going back to the last episode, it should make you look more intelligent. Sometimes it just makes me feel more stupid, to be completely honest.
There's a question I was going to ask about. Do you feel when you're speaking a different language, do you feel the perception of English speakers, for instance, when you're in America, did you feel that they might have thought that you are, how should I phrase this, less intelligent than you are simply because you're speaking English with a, albeit quite slight accent, but an accent nevertheless? Do you think that people reacted to you in a maybe slightly negative way in that respect?
Not to me personally, because when I was in America, everyone thought that I was, as they would call it, British, because apparently that's how I sound, which I can't really. I mean, I obviously can tell the difference between accents, but I don't really know what I sound like. But for them, I sounded English. So I feel like if I mispronounce something, maybe they were just thinking I was English. Because obviously you have different pronunciation. So it never happened to me personally, but obviously it's something that people who speak more languages have to deal with. And I think that was one of the reasons why I didn't speak for a very long time. Because I just didn't want, I don't want to have an accent. I mean, like, foreign accent. And when someone does point it out, it's not comfortable and it does make me feel stupid. Like, oh, you have an accent. I'm like, yeah, because I speak 2 languages, and I feel like it's such a stupid thing to make fun of. I can't imagine making fun of someone who's speaking, let's say, my language. If I meet someone who's a foreigner and they speak Czech, they have my biggest respect. Because, first of all, Czech's hard, but learning any language is hard if you think about it. And just the fact that you are able to hold a conversation with me, I know exactly what you mean, I can understand you. How could I shame you for having an accent, first of all? I just think that it's one of these comments that people make to make themselves feel better. That it's actually not about the person, like, haha, it's so funny you have an accent, but it comes from deeply rotten insecurity about, like, oh, I only speak English and I never managed to learn another language, so I will shame everyone else for learning another language, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do completely. I started my BBC career for several years at BBC World Service, broadcasting to the world in, I think it was at the time, there were 45 different language sections in the World Service. I'm not sure how many now, possibly more. Obviously, the biggest part of BBC World Service was what we called World Service in English. So we had multiple departments broadcasting sports news and current affairs, music, that was my department, and so on and so forth. Plus, we had all these other language sections. But our key ethos, if you like, was that no one is a bad English speaker if they're speaking English. And there are no funny foreigners. That was the rule. No accent is an accent. All accents are acceptable, given that if you take the number of people across the world who speak English, the vast majority of them are doing it as their second language. So every accent is acceptable. That was very, very strict ethos at World Service.
I like that.
And for World Service in English, the idea was that we're simply exporting the English language. That was it, and hopefully providing some news, information, and entertainment along the way that could be enjoyed. But yeah.
I mean, especially when it comes to English, when even native speakers have so many accents. And, you can sort of argue with me that probably every language has several accents. I mean, even Czech has several accents, which, by the way, I definitely can't tell the difference in, but I'm sure they are there. But if you have, Canadian person, American, English person, Scottish person, and Australian person, they don't even sound like they speak the same language. And I'm making fun even of my own accent, which, I wouldn't call it Czech, but whatever weird accent I have, I make fun of it. But one thing is making fun of it yourself, and a completely different thing is making fun of someone else.
And we are living in more enlightened times, so I would hope that it's not so much an issue. I mean, I think that if my attitude is, if somebody is gracious enough to speak to me in my own language, I don't care if they about their accent. Actually, quite often you find the accent is quite attractive, quite interesting, but certainly not something that I would dare to even to make fun of. But I just think it would be completely wrong. It kind of brings me on to the next point. This is something, maybe it's more relevant to the early stages of learning a language and working your way to some kind of bilinguality. Word of the day.
I should get like $1 every time you say that.
$1. Now, you was talking about how you were speaking English in the UK English way, the British way, and now suddenly you come up with $1. Please.
$1? Well, I could say the Czech crown, but that's worth nothing.
What's wrong with a Great British Pound?
I was worried I will mispronounce it.
And that's exactly the point I'm making about the thing you have to overcome early on as you're learning the language and then needing to speak it is the embarrassment factor. Is can you gain the confidence? You certainly had it at school because you never said anything unless I absolutely forced you.
Yeah, that was Nick. That was because I didn't like you. I just didn't want to talk to you in general. That had nothing to do with language.
That's okay. Nobody likes me.
That was actually now I feel like I have to apologize to you, which I obviously want to do, but like, yeah, good tactic, man. But I wanted to say that I feel like this is another very hard part of speaking a language. It's even worse than developing a personality, the confidence. And I still struggle with it. Even I feel like even in English, sometimes a bit, but with, being bilingual, I was like, yeah, that's something I sort of overcame. Then I started learning French and it's all back. And it's so frustrating because when I give an example of my French, because I don't really have that in English, I know the grammar, I know the vocabulary, and when I'm home alone, speaking to myself, even out loud, I'm like, girl, your French is good. As an insecure, not confident person, I can judge that my French is not bad for the level I'm at. But then I'm supposed to speak to someone else, even like my French teacher, or like even when you ask me to speak French, or even when my family asks me. No one in my family speaks French, and I'm still shy to speak French in front of them, even though if I mess up, they will have no idea. And it's such a huge part of that. And it's actually something I recently told to my grandpa, because my grandpa went crazy and decided to learn English. He's 70. He doesn't speak any other language at all. And suddenly he was just like, you know what? I will learn English. I'll speak English. And I was like, yeah, all respect there. But the thing is that he doesn't know anything. He knows a few phrases, a few words, but the confidence he's presenting it with is unbelievable. And just based on that, I'm like, you speak better than I do because you have that confidence in it. And I feel like your English can be absolutely perfect on paper, but as long as you don't have that confidence, you will always sound like it's your second language. It's mine. And I do make mistakes and I am aware of them. But if I give you that confidence and that attitude and that personality, you are not even able to tell sometimes. And that's the most important thing. Also, what sucks with that is that it's not something an ordinary school will teach you, especially Czech school, and especially during the times when I was going to school. We had perfect grammar. And you can tell, because the first time I realized was when you came around. Because my grammar was basically perfect. It was really good. I mean, you can ask your wife, or maybe don't ask her, because I'm not quite sure about it now. But I was a nerd. I was the smart kid. So technically my English was perfect on paper. And then you came around and I wasn't able to talk to you at all, or any native speaker. I remember when we went with school to England for the first time and we were staying in host families, I was not able to communicate the very basics. Not because I didn't know how to, but because I didn't have that confidence. And I knew I had an accent and I knew I would be making mistakes. And I feel like this all is just the killer of language. And if you are not able to overcome that, you will probably never get to the level when you can call yourself bilingual.
So how did
Maybe
you
that's a hot
overcome that?
take.
Okay, hot take number one. But it goes back to the question that I asked earlier, was there a point at which you felt that you were approaching being bilingual? And certainly when we reconnected up 2 years after you'd left elementary school and you had fairly recently turned 17, and we started having weekly conversation lessons, and your English had, grown exponentially. It was fantastic. And I was, quite taken back by it. And also, I was constantly trying to measure your vocabulary, and there were certain things that you knew.
I know.
I was thinking, how on earth did she learn that? How did she know that? Where did you get the...
Movies. Literally. I feel like, that's another thing that I feel like when you are born like around my generation, I don't want to specify, I don't know the numbers, but like if you are born around my generation and you are European and not a native English speaker, you are almost like automatically bilingual. And like this is very hot take, and that's very like putting it in a very simple way. But I already grew up with the internet and like with social media and reconnecting with people and consuming the content on social media, and most of it was in English, so you sort of gain it subconsciously. And I often say that English sort of just appeared in my mind. I don't feel like I had to learn it. Obviously, you have to learn the grammar and the basics, but like the conversational type of English and the modern everyday type of English, I feel it just appeared in my head. And it was just there. And I just needed to unlock it through practice and confidence. But like with French, I'm like, there's so much I have to learn. How do I even find the time to learn every single thing? And now I'm just like, you know what? At a certain point, I will just switch my whole phone in French, and all of my social media I will switch into French, and I will just listen to French podcasts, because that's literally how I learned English to this level. But also coming back to the fact that a lot of people in my generation do speak and understand basic English, or like, I wouldn't even call it like basic English. I would call it social media English and like modern English. It's actually, that's something that's really easy when I'm talking with my friends, because I don't have to translate every word. There are certain words that I just automatically know in English. So I'm talking in Czech and just throwing the English words in there, which, by the way, a lot of people judge. And I feel it's a generational thing, because I feel like my generation is being very shamed for that by older people. And even I've heard it many times, and you have it on social media, like, oh my gosh, why are you trying to look cool and speak English and like speak, like the language that you were born with and blah, blah. And I'm like, I am not trying to sound cool. I'm just doing what's easiest for my brain. But that's probably a topic that a lot of people have different opinions on. But the thing is that for me it's still easy, but then I speak to someone like my mom and I literally have to translate every word. Crazy. The emotional labor I have to do for that, to speak to her in Czech, is crazy, and it's so exhausting.
So you talked about judging, people being judgy when it comes to language. Do people judge intelligence through language?
Well, I feel like that's something you should answer, Because even earlier you were asking, like, if I ever had someone telling me I'm stupid because of my accent or something like that.
Uh,
You have a strong accent. Like, people will
mm,
understand you, but they will immediately know that it's just like learned phrases. And I often feel, even from like what I observed, you interacting with Czech people, I feel like people often don't really know on what level they can speak to you in Czech because they don't know what you understand. I mean, you are that type of person who doesn't give a fuck about what people think of you at all. I wish I had that because I don't. I can imagine if it was me, it would kill me. I would never speak to anyone because I don't know. I just feel like it's so something that you can judge so easily.
Actually, it's interesting to me because it's the first time I've heard really you talk about how suddenly your English just sort of appeared and how basically you were kind of soaking it up by osmosis almost by, through
Literally.
podcasts and movies. In fact, it's a miracle that you didn't end up with an American accent on that basis. Because it's funny, we were talking about how when you were in America and Americans would make the assumption that you were
British.
but because of your accent or lack of, and certainly not speaking English with an American accent, but
Mm.
many pupils that I taught in across 3 schools in the time that I was teaching in Czech would speak English with a very, very pronounced American accent, mainly through their exposure to movies. I mean, often it meant that their English was pretty good, but it would come with an American accent, which is fine, as I said, no accent judgment coming from this side of things. But when it comes to learning a language, is it talent or is it a learned skill?
No, because like to a certain point, I do want to say it's talent, but the only reason I want to say that is once again because of my grandfather, who never spoke any other language. And suddenly he knows 5 words, but can hold a conversation with them, and his accent is very good. Like, it's not this, very pronounced Czech accent that most people have. So I'm like, it just had to be somewhere in his brain. Plus, also, I probably have it in my DNA from someone. And my mom doesn't speak any language. She never even wanted to speak any other language. And my father, he does speak some English, but that's just because he has to for work. And that's pretty much it. So I'm like, where did it come from that I have this need almost for speaking languages and then I am able to speak languages? So to a certain point, I want to say it's a talent, but as with everything else, I feel like learning it and developing the skill is more important than being born with a talent for it. And that's also something that I sort of see with my friends or classmates or like people who were always learning English since elementary school. As long as you are doing it for school, it sucks. You have to want to learn the language. And that was basically the case with me. Like, my English was always just good enough to get a good mark, but otherwise I didn't really give a fuck. And only then, when I started to do it for myself because I wanted to, that was when my English was really good and when it started developing. So you just have to want to, I guess. I don't know. Honestly, man, like, if I could just be reborn like tomorrow, I would want to be born into a bilingual family. Like, it's just you are born with it. It's so easy. I'm telling you, my kids will be learning at least 3 languages from the second they are born, because it just makes your life so much easier. It's just a premium personality that you are born with, and I love that.
Okay. I'm just thinking of your poor kids
How
learning
dare you?
from the minute they're born. Right, now I'm changing your nappy and now it's class.
Well, it's not like that.
And here's your homework.
You having bilingual children should be the last person claiming that. Because have you done that? I highly doubt that.
No.
You were living in Czech, yeah? Your wife speaks to them in Czech, but together you communicate in English. And It's not learning, it's just
Yeah,
being
well,
exposed to
that's
it.
why I always speak English, because my job was to always speak to them in English. My wife's job is to speak to them in Czech, and that's how they become bilingual. So that's my defense, Your Honor, and
Okay.
the defense rests. I think we rest now. I
Okay,
think
sure.
it's time for us to go. So I would just say before we do go, though, that again, let's put this out to vote to our listenership. If you think Michelle is bilingual, give us a like on this podcast and we can count them up and see if you think she genuinely is bilingual.
I
And
just don't think it's fair.
while you're there,
I feel like a lab rat.
I'll resist the temptation to say, "Oh, and you look like one as well," but I won't say that.
Clearly you didn't resist enough. Try harder.
No. I'm not going to say it. Oh, wait a minute. And while you're voting on Michelle's bilinguality, and I will go away and look up if that is an actual word, don't forget to subscribe, because then we love you forever. And that's it for this week.
Nice. And maybe like if you just don't want to judge me and maybe like, I don't know, tell me instead that you feel for me and that being bilingual is actually a struggle, let me know that as well. So, don't let Nick win. Like who is he to tell you what to do at the end of the day, right?